What did a lot of these retailers end up doing as a result?
You can imagine if you're relatively more exposed to Facebook, you're spending tons of money on Facebook ads, and then suddenly Facebook becomes less effective. You probably try and find other places to put your money. What we could see in the data was that firms were spending less on Facebook ads as a percent of their total budget, but it was something like 5 percentage points, which in the grand scheme of things, it was statistically and economically significant, but it's not like game changing. What that indicated to us was firms were doing the best that they could, but there was some element of these meta ads that was really hard for these companies to replace.
Not insignificant, but quite a lot of money, but less than I was expecting. I've got a couple of theories for why that is. Sometimes if all your systems and processes are around this investment, a bit of like sunk cost fallacy comes in. And then what I've seen a lot of clients do temporarily is they'll double down. So they'll end up just expending more or making adjustments to keep on with that investment, and was trying and brute force it. The most interesting thing that I read, and I want you to elaborate on this, is, and we were talking about this before, around what effect it had on, again, not just conversions, but delineating those conversions or purchases from new customer acquisition, which is the big growth driver.
So that was really kind of data set two. Through data set two, we could observe not only the spending for Meta, TikTok, et cetera, but we could also, for a subset of the firms, we could see their Shopify data. And through Shopify, we can have a pretty clean identification of a new purchase versus a repeat purchase. And what we found was that the decline was much sharper for new customer acquisition than for overall revenue. Existing customers, they operate more on autopilot. You know, they know the brand, they're very familiar, they've probably been back there multiple times. They don't need to be prodded onto the website through a Facebook ad. Whereas the new customer, you know, they're not familiar. And so they're going to need to be pushed through paid advertising a bit more than those existing orders will. So when we talk about the implications for small versus big firms, I think that was one of the big mechanisms as to why.
And just how much, though, if we're talking, like, was there sort of an average here that you found in the data?
It's pretty big.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, this was one point we wanted to make sure everyone really understood. The specific percentage decline was something like 60%. And you hear that and think, oh my God, you know, all these firms must have just imploded immediately. And that's not true, because it's like a 60% worse customer acquisition relative to firms that were less exposed. And so I think that's part of the key is the firms that were less exposed were probably still growing acquisition. The firms that were more exposed were taking more of a hit.
So yeah, if you were starting an e-com store around that 2021 period, halfway through the year, wasn't as easy as perhaps if you're already going for a couple of years.
Typically for the ones that have high exposure to Facebook. So it could be that there were some other young firms that, you know, they were just relatively less exposed. And so we wouldn't be making that statement about them. It really is the ones where, you know, they had a very substantial exposure to, you know, to meta ads or to iOS devices.
What have you observed as a result of this, like business-wise? Have firms collapsed? Like, how's the e-com market going right now?
Yeah, so I'd say collapsed is the wrong word, although we do find these like really large hit to revenue from ATT. It seems like more of foregone growth is like they should have been growing. They were expecting to be growing. It was just sort of baked in, and then they sort of got cut off, and they were going much less quickly than they had been before. And so, I wouldn't say collapsed, although probably there are some that have collapsed or gone out of business. Yep. But instead, it's that growth that they expected and the trajectory that they had been on went away.
Out of those direct-to-consumer darlings, they've been having a real tough time. Now, they would also be the bigger firms, but you know, the Allbirds, the Warby Parkers, and even, you know, you hear, we give that example of Nike. You know, there was that well-publicized news of them kind of shifting a bit more back towards wholesale then. So, you know, I think it's been a little less profitable. We've still seen some growth, but it hasn't been quite as much. It's a little bit disappointing, and it's been expensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, I think that sort of like is in line with what I've observed as well, so that's good.